Hey guys, welcome. Fedora Friday number 24. Fedora Friday number 24. Hey, 2 dozen, right? So yeah, just good to be back in the swing of things, right? Just got back from my trip from Puerto Rico, still trying to get my bearings. So yeah, pardon our dust, right? But yeah, good to be back. And like I said, it always feels like a little bit of a surprise every time I come back and do one of these. Anyhow, we got a great show today. I'll see if anybody decides to stop in. But yeah, this is a good one. This is another one of those, especially when I do shows, right? Like I've done Tulsa King before, and when I do a show, it's always like that thing. If you've seen some of these episodes before, you'll see that I have like a little bit of remorse sometimes when it's like a really good movie, like a movie I've seen a lot, and then I feel like I'm not doing it justice. I think inherently with a TV show, one that's like multi-seasons, it seems like I always get that feeling because there's no way I'm going to be able to cover all the hats here in this show. Ian, how's it going, my man? Good to see you. One of my faithful moderators, Ian from London. Always good to see you, my friend. So yeah, we're just talking about how these shows, like this is one that I knew I was going to do at some point, but I always put it off because I'm like, yeah, that's going to take some time. But I think I always end up in the same boat, which is I'm just going to do what I can do. And again, just because I don't do it justice, really, I think the main benefit is kind of just providing a little bit of a sampler for some of the hats that you're going to see. That's why some of the still shots, I incorporate that. And ultimately, it's one of those things where if you're familiar with the show, you probably already know that there's a lot of great hats. But if you're not familiar with the show, the slides give you a little bit of a teaser, and maybe will give you the impetus to go and check out the show. And this is one of those shows, we've talked about movies that I talked about that, hey, this is not necessarily a great story, like meaning it's not well done, but the hats are worth it. I think a little bit of Borsellino on that point. Maybe some of the Rat Pack movies, right? Robin and the Seven Hoods. But this show, like a lot of HBO produced shows, it just happens to be stellar in terms of the characters, in terms of like the way it moves. And I got to tell you, I don't think I finished the series. I think I got up to like season 3, or maybe it was just season 2. But that was enough for me to know it's like, okay, this is a good show. But yeah, I wanted to kind of showcase some of the hats because, well, there's a lot of them, and the nice thing about this particular show is that a lot of the characters you already know, right? If you watch any kind of these mob movie genre type movies, you already know a lot of the characters here. So they already has that benefit. And then it introduces some other characters, primarily the main character, who was based on a real life person, a real life political figure in Atlantic City. So, but yeah, I mean, I haven't had anybody drop in yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the slides. This will be one of those things where I'm going to just keep moving. I'm not going to talk overly a lot about the plot lines. Remember, I'm still kind of just trying to finish up this show, or at least I don't even know if I've gotten to the middle of the show yet. But that way you can see some of the flavor here in terms of hats, right? And again, and some of the storyline here. So yeah, so let's just add this to the show. If anybody joins us, then they can just chime in. I'll pause. But Steve Buscemi, I mean, wow, we've covered already Steve Buscemi in his role, in the little minor role that he had, in the oh wow, what is escaping me now? King of New York, that one where he played Test Tube, and he rocked I believe it was a pork pie, but I could be wrong on that. It looked like a pork pie in my memory, but whatever it was maybe it was just a stingy brim fedora. But Steve Buscemi is one of those like way underrated actors, right? He can do comedy, right? He's good friends with Adam Sandler, so you see him in playing little roles in Adam Sandler movies throughout the years. But also a serious actor, right? I mean, you think about obviously The Sopranos. You think about his role in Reservoir Dogs, right? He always seems to like maybe never have the starring role per se, but he always lights up the screen, right? I talked about that by a lot of actors. And here he's basically the star of the show. He plays a political figure, essentially the treasurer of Atlantic City. And surprise, surprise, it takes place during right the beginning of Prohibition, right? So like 1920. So 1920, right at the beginning of Prohibition, you see a lot of these figures that will ultimately come like, I guess, robber barons, right? They made their money. They saw prohibition as an opportunity, right? They knew that people still wanted liquor, and they were going to get into that business, even though it was illegal. And Nucky Thompson, so Enoch Nucky Thompson in this show, and I believe the real gentleman was Enoch Johnson. So not Thompson, but Johnson. So Nucky is one of those folks that saw this as an opportunity. He already wielded a lot of power in Atlantic City, but he just saw that that this Prohibition era was going to create an opportunity, and he jumped right into it. Jedi, welcome. Yeah, he's great in Con Air. Yes, not the star, of course, but great. Yeah, he's again, he always seems to be not the star of the show, except for this show. But he kind of steals scenes, right? He just has one of those like faces. Desperado would be another one. He was like Antonio Banderas's right hand man, right? And right in the beginning, he kind of lights up the screen. So yeah, shout out to Steve Buscemi. And I got to tell you, besides the fact that this is a compelling show, right? Yeah. Oh, and we can't forget The Big Lebowski. That's right, The Big Lebowski. That's right. Donnie, you're out of your element. Poor Donnie ends up dying. Hopefully that not too much of a spoiler. If you haven't watched The Big Lebowski, then I don't know where you're living. Watch The Big Lebowski. Not a lot of hats. I don't think there's too many, if any, hats. There might be a couple spattered here and there. I can think of Sam Elliott, right? He plays the cowboy. He's the one that does the, but yeah, not too many hats, but great movie. So yeah, so this movie, besides being a stellar story and having some relatable characters that you already know, and you provide a little nuance, it has great actors, right? And we'll get a little bit into that later as we'll go through some of the others, a stellar cast. But the hats and style, right? I mean, you're looking at this photo right now. Look at this hat and look at this outfit, and one tidbit, Robert, who's a affiliate of the channel, essentially shared that Gary White was in charge, right? Gary White, based out of Buffalo, who's passed away fairly recently, was in charge of making the hats for Boardwalk Empire. And Gary White has done hats for other movies as well. But yeah, just stellar job, just tremendous. Yeah, and the Sopranos, yes, yeah. He played the other Tony Blundetto, Tony the Animal Blundetto, who also met his demise in the show as well. So Steve Buscemi seems to get killed off a lot, but he always steals the scenes before that. But yeah, I'm not gonna go too much ad nauseum into here. Maybe I'll chime in here because, well, one, I haven't even finished this show. Right, I think I got 2 seasons deep. Let's just say it's 2 or 3 seasons deep, and there's 5 seasons altogether. Right, it was produced between 2010 and 2014, and a lot of the events, right, are based on true events, right? So obviously they fictionalized a lot of things, but a lot of the characters are based on true characters. And again, the cast that you see here, and you will see some of them, I'll repeat them because some of the folks have appeared in other works that we've done here on Fedora Friday. So we'll just go in because again, this is just a treat for anybody that's really into hats, fine hats in particular. And this one right here, besides being like this nice, I guess, beige felt, this light color felt, right? It looks like it has an olive ribbon with a matching olive brim trim, and it looks impeccable. Like, right? This is one of those hats that like, wow, I got to have this hat. And this is a nice thing for some of our folks that are hatters, right? Like Paul and Robert and Josh, Brian, and anybody else that dabbles in hatting, right? Brad even has made hats before. This is one of those shows that to give you a good idea of right for future works, right? So I think for the hatters, this is definitely a show. If you haven't seen it already, if you're into hats, you've probably already seen this show. It's just a good one. And you can see some of the combinations here. I think that might be either the same hat or a slightly different, like the different hat a variation, because this one kind of looks a little bit more like a kind of a rose colored, but it could just be the light. But you can see how the hat is paired with the suits. And Nucky Thompson is impeccably dressed throughout, right? Remember, he's a well-known politician and is just happened to be digging his heels into more corrupt enterprises, right? He's already corrupt, but he sees opportunity. He's a greedy guy, right? Like a lot of the ambitious folks that we've covered, ambitious criminals. He wants more. And but yeah, the suits and the hats that he displays here, a lot of them are Homburgs, right? And we've talked about how a lot of the shows that we've covered use the Homburg strategically, right? You know, it's meant to kind of portray a boss, right? It's the boss hat. You know, maybe I should have worn one of my Homburgs today, but I decided to wear this, you know, the Stetson Bowler from the 30s. But yeah, he wears a lot of Homburgs in this show, and the pairings are just immaculate. So yeah, so I'll keep going through some of these. Like I said, some of these photos, I won't talk too ad nauseum. This might end up being a very short show, but you can obviously pause on some of these stills and hopefully zoom in if you're able to do that on your screen. But definitely check out this show. If you haven't already, this is a good one. Definitely very compelling. Check this out. I mean, this one also looks like a play on the same type of hat. This one actually looks brown. So this could all be the same exact hat, right? So I'm gonna say this is a Homburg here, another Homburg, but this is just, it could be the same hat, but just the lighting could be altering it. But here it looks more brown. It could be a little bit olive, but it looks more brown. But it just pairs so well with the suits that Nucky wears. So yeah, it kind of like Steve, you know, I don't know how many bosses he kind of portrayed, but once he donned the hat, you know, he's like, yeah, Nucky's a boss, you know. And I just love the little flower, right? The little rose or whatever it is on his lapel here, right? It just adds like that touch of class. So he is, you know, by all intents and purposes, a guy not to be trifled with. But he is also kind of has some vulnerabilities, right? That's one of those characters that you have to kind of, you know, we talk about like the morally ambiguous, right? So Nucky may not be as morally ambiguous, but you do end up rooting for him, right? Like he's obviously not a nice guy, but he has these sensibilities, and you do end up kind of rooting for him, and you don't want to see him perish. And he's dealing with some really crazy characters, and we'll get a little bit more into that in a second. But yeah, check this out, man. What a hat! Like again, Steve Buscemi is probably a guy that's like a little tall, lanky guy, right? I don't know how tall he is. He always struck me as somebody that's at least 6 feet tall, or could be even a little taller. But he's very slight man, right? You can see the shoulders are very narrow, and he wears some of these hats to perfection. You know, like this is a pretty sizable, you know, hat, but it doesn't look off on him. It just makes him look just impeccable. You know, he's got a kind of a bluish or gray or blue-gray pinstripe suit here. It's just the costuming here is impeccable. Yeah, that is the scene there. Yeah. I wanna you know, that the hat is the scene there. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And that's how you feel in watching this. And the thing about it is, now don't get me wrong. You know, this is a great story. It's compelling. It's got a great cast, but the hats, right? Like even if you didn't care for the story, you don't care for gangster films or any kind of genre like that. Just watching this for the hats, because it seems just like in every scene or every other scene, there's a new hat. And I love it, right? It's like one of those, it's a typical HBO produced show in that you get a lot of characters, right? It's almost like in many ways, like a Marvel Universe type of show where they'll introduce characters, they'll kill some off, right? You'll see somebody famous for a few shows, and then get killed off, and then they'll bring somebody else famous. Or maybe it's just like that for the season, right? Tulsa King is very much like that. And but ultimately, because this is based more or less in the early 1920s, you get to see the hats. And the hats, like I said, Gary White did an impeccable job. Rest his soul. He just recently passed, and did a great job. Yeah, he's actually 5'9", so not so tall. Yeah, so he's actually I think I'm 5'10", so but I guess maybe his frame makes him look a little taller, at least in my mind. Right, he has a slight frame, he's very lanky. So yeah, you know, with the hats that he's wearing, it just, again, it always looks perfect on him, and again, he always gives that aura of the boss. So yeah, I'll keep going on this to ad nauseum. Here we have a boater. You know, now you guys know I bought my first boater hat not too long ago, and again, looks great, right? You know, as you know, during this time period, boater hats were also pretty popular, and so yeah, so they just, I think, again, in terms of period appropriateness, to me, I think they nailed it without being an expert in that. And then you can see, right, the guy right behind him, I think that might be his brother, right? It's been a little bit since I've seen the show, but you can see him wearing the gray Homburg. I have a Dobbs Homburg, a Dobbs 15 Homburg that looks very much like that. It's from 1957, not from the 20s. But yeah, man, look at the suits, look at the hats. It's just a treat for the senses. Again, Steve Buscemi always is dressed impeccably. You know, love it. This is a Panama hat, right? An optimal style Panama hat, right? And you know, wearing it with the brim down, looks like, look at that ribbon. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous hat, you know. Paired here with like another gray suit. Kind of looks almost a little bit like a herringbone suit, but wow, man. Just great. And look at that ribbon. You know, it almost, you know, it's got a really wide ribbon. Almost kind of looks like it's, you know, a double decker or triple decker ribbon, but it's just, I think, one wide ribbon. And again, what can you do? Like I said, even though I don't consider myself a super huge fan of the Panama hats, I just picked one up in Puerto Rico, and I've always thought they were cool, especially the optimal style. You know, so yeah, just again, you know, Nucky wears a variety. I guess we don't see, the only one we don't see him in is a pork pie, which would make sense. You don't really think of a pork pie hat as a boss hat. Yeah, much broader ribbon than is usual. Yeah, and this could be, again, I wouldn't know what the ribbon size would be in the 1920s, something that's common, but one, maybe it was more common against for folks that were well off, or maybe it was just something that was anachronistic, and Gary White decided that he was going to include them. You know, whatever it is, I really like them a lot, so I'm a big fan of the wide ribbon. You know, and yeah, it's just amazing. You get hats for everybody here. Here's another side profile shot, and you get to see some of the flat caps. Lots of flat caps, lots of newsboy hats. Just a swath of hats, and then you can see right in the background, you can see you know, a bonnet style cap that females wearing. So you get to see hats not just on males but also on females here, and it's just really nice to see. You get to see so many color combinations along with the suits and the pairings there. So you gotta love this. Let's see what else we got. Another shot here. This is another Homburg hat. This is that brown one, I believe, that we saw earlier. But just giving you guys another angle of this. Just amazing. And I don't know how Atlantic City looked back in the day. If you guys have an idea, I just really know I've seen Atlantic City more recently. It doesn't look like this. You know, Atlantic City is kind of a rougher part of town now. But yeah, it just reminded me of Coney Island, you know, kind of a more upscale Coney Island, you know, from back here in the 20s. So, you know, I'm hoping that's accurate. But yeah, it gives you a feel for what kind of town that Atlantic City was. And it was one that definitely was very out in the open for gangsters, right? Very, very corrupt city. Probably still is, right? From all intents and purposes, probably still run by organized crime, but Atlantic City has seen its heyday, right? I mean, maybe there'll be a revival at some point, but it's not what it used to be. But yeah, just amazing views here. And again, the suits and the hats are impeccable. Here's, I believe, that same Homburg again. Here it looks a little bit more olive again. Again, this could all be that it's the lighting, maybe this olive color, but you can see that wide ribbon, and that brim trim is just, I love this hat. Like, I really love this hat, so yeah, shout out to Gary White and anybody else involved in the costuming here. Let's see here. We have, now this could be his brother. Now, this might be his actual brother, but you can see he's wearing kind of a derby style hat, or it's just an open crown. But regardless, you can see the Homburg on Nucky, right? This could be that very same brown Homburg, but here in this light, it kind of looks burgundy, right? It's funny the way to see how the light plays along with the felts on some of these shots, right? We've covered that before. In some of the movies where we see some of the various same hat, we know it's the same hat, but you see it in a different light, and it just looks really, really different. Yeah, probably the same hat. Yeah, I agree. But again, you can see how the light plays along with it. It's just amazing to see that. And I'll mention this again. My buddy Steve Heck, who collects a lot of these real Ector velour, right? He was on the show and showed some of his collection. Those are just trippy to see how the light shines against that velour, right? That real Ector velour. It just does something else where it's like, I've never seen a felt like that. So shout out to Steve. Steve, if you're watching, let's get you back on here. I definitely want to see some more of your collection, and he also is very knowledgeable. So, we definitely could use some more of that knowledge here. So, yeah. Hey, what's up, Nathan? Hey, Mighty Luke. All right. I never heard that one, but yeah, I'll take it. Anytime you get called Mighty, you got to take that. Yeah. Welcome, Nathan. Yeah, Nathan, we're covering Boardwalk Empire. I've already shown some of the hats by, that were worn by Steve Buscemi's character. Man, what a show. His brother Eli is played by Shea Wingham. Yes. Again, very stellar cast here. Like I said, some of these folks are a little bit more famous than others, but man, if you look at that casting, man, it's kind of like a who's who for a lot of folks in Hollywood. Maybe not all leading folks, but you're like, okay, definitely seen them, and in several movies. We'll cover that. Nathan says, I haven't seen this yet. Is it a series? Yes, it's an HBO produced series. It's one of those, like, again, if you're into HBO series, if you're into like Sopranos, The Wire, Oz, you can see that this show is done in a very similar style. I mentioned this earlier, that they have a lot of like cameos, right? They have a lot of folks that are very well known, and they kind of have a lot of characters, right? And the characters will come in and out of the show. Maybe some characters will appear and only appear for a few episodes, or maybe just one season, and then they'll disappear. And they'll bring somebody else in. Tulsa King is very much that style as well. It's just, again, very, very sharp. Yeah, Steve B looking sharp. Yeah, this is what I mentioned earlier, that, again, I don't think Steve Buscemi is always known for his well-dressed characters, right? But, this is based on a real-life, political figure in Atlantic City, right? Enoch Johnson. Here, the character is called Enoch Nucky Thompson, and this is a political, very high-powered political figure, right? He's an Atlantic City treasurer that's dipping his toes into the crime world, right? More into like the booze world, right? Because essentially, Prohibition is just coming into way, right? 1920, and I feel like that rings very true to the era, right? A lot of folks made their fortunes, right? We had, I believe, Jack Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's dad, that made his fortune during Prohibition, right? Running booze, and a lot of fortunes were made during that time. And Nucky, I don't know if the real Enoch was also involved in these activities, but I do know that Atlantic City was pretty corrupt, and still is. But yeah, Steve plays the boss really well. Like I said, the costuming here really takes Steve Buscemi's slight frame, and it just kind of like, this guy's a boss. You can see some more of the shots here, and we'll get into some. This is Chalky White to his left, right? And you might know him from The Wire, the actor. But I'll get some more shots of him later. But you can see here kind of what looks like another Homburg, but brown. And I don't know if this looks different, right? Because this one doesn't have the side dents, or at least from what I can tell. but again, just pairs very, very well. You know, Steve Buscemi strikes this. He makes a striking figure in this and throughout this show. Another shot you can see here, that derby, you know, and you can see some of the other fedoras, right? So you got Enoch here with some of his kind of his goons, right? His entourage, you know, and this is kind of a different outfit, right? This looks more black, right? Another Hamburg, but black, and again, just looks really striking. This just makes Enoch, right? It makes Nucky look a little bit more menacing, right? Again, if you watch the show, he's not, I wouldn't describe him as menacing. He kind of adds he's a very, very nuanced character, right? He has a soft spot, right? And, you know, but he's dealing with a lot of, right? He can be ruthless when he needs to be, and he can be tough when he needs to be. So just really one of those characters that I think Steve Buscemi hit a home run with. And yeah, definitely catch this. Let's see what else we got here. It's probably, this looks like a higher crown on here. It looks like another Hamburg, but with a higher crown, or it could just be, you know, this is a little bit more distant. I don't know if I can exactly tell. But again, it's just so many hats here. It's hard to kind of like, you know, you just have you know, a smorgasbord, right, of hats here. So let's see, we'll keep it moving. All right, this is Nucky here, and you can see again, I love that overcoat, that sort of camel colored overcoat, paired with what looks like another brown Hamburg. But yeah, you can see him here talking to you know, another main character, James Darmody, who's played by Michael Pitt. And you see hats on James Darmody, but you're usually seeing flat caps, right? So he's a character you definitely see rocking the flat cap most times when he's on screen, or he has no hat at all, right? It's kind of like one of those slick back hairdos. But yeah, very, very great character, right? He's kind of Nucky's protege, right? But he's somebody that is kind of a little, I guess, a little weary of Nucky, you know? And even though he's kind of supposed to be, you know, following up in his footsteps, he kind of is, he doesn't trust Nucky too much. And he kind of just sets himself up to kind of detach himself from Nucky. So that's, I won't go more into that. But those of you that watch the show kind of know what happens. But yeah, this is kind of a fedora shot. So this is one of those more rare fedora shots for James Darmody. Man, what a great look. You know, you got kind of that high crown action, just amazing. And look at that overcoat. It looks like a salmon colored overcoat. That same hat with the olive ribbon, but this time paired with a salmon overcoat on you know, on Nucky. Man, just amazing. Ian says the hats show someone's place in the hierarchy. Yes, correct. And we've talked about that several times here, where a lot of the shows and a lot of the movies that we've covered will strategically use the hats as a, you know, a way for you to kind of know where somebody stands in you know, in the hierarchy, right? You know that you got, if they got a top hat or a Hamburg, they're more of a boss type figure. And then you got these fedoras, and then kind of the bowler, and you know, and if feasible, then the pork pies. I don't recall seeing too many pork pies in this show, and it could be a good reason. Maybe the pork pie wasn't that prevalent in the 1920s, at least not for Atlantic City. I don't know. Or maybe, you know, Gary White wasn't a big fan of the pork pie and didn't want to really provide those. You know, whatever the reason, I'm sure they probably existed. I just don't recall too many of them. So yeah, you know, it just seems that we had every type of hat. I'm like, yeah, why not the pork pie? But you know, could be a good reason for that. Let's see. I'll keep this going. I've got another shot here with the fedora, and you can see here, I believe this is his wife, you know, wearing kind of a black, you know, black outfit here with a matching bonnet hat. Just pretty amazing hats all around, right? Like I said, even for even on the females, you know, we got such a great swath in color combination here. This one, it looks like she might be coming back from a funeral here. But yeah, just really stellar. This is another shot here, kind of the family shot. And you can see here another high crown fedora on James. So maybe he did wear the fedora more than I remember. It just seemed like his look was always either a flat cap or no hat at all. but I did find some stills, and it could just be that that's what I cued in on, and right when I picked the photos out, there were definitely a lot of photos of James without a hat, with his slick back do. But I focus on the hats for obvious reasons. But here you got a nice green colored hat paired with a blue suit. Now, again, me personally, I'm like, okay, I'm not the biggest fan of that color combination, but it doesn't look bad. We've talked with Paul and with Ian about the green hat, right? And how like it's one of those colors, right, that are paired right with like wine, right? So outside of the major, the more conservative colors, your blacks, your browns, your grays, I'm missing one. There was one more: brown, black, gray. I think there was another one that I think you often see, but I can't recall. But regardless of that, the green hats and your wine colored hats are a little bit kind of in between, right? They're like the open road of colors, right? They're right between kind of like conservative and a more kind of festival out there colors, right? So, I just think that they look really classy. And I know Ian's a big fan of the green, and so is Paul, green and wine. So yeah, shout out to you guys, and you get to see some green hats in here. Yeah, and it looks like his wife there, or love interest, is wearing a kind of a beret style here, and you could see a boater there in the background. Just again, so many hats, like even the baby's got a hat, kind of a sailor hat, let's see here. Here we go. He goes another flat cap. Again, you guys already know I've become a much bigger fan of flat caps lately. I've been wearing them a lot more often. I took a flat cap with me to Puerto Rico, and it travels really well. And even if you're just into flat caps, you do get a nice array here on this show. So yeah. So we covered James. Let's see if there's any more here of James. Here's James with his hat off, right? And you can see him with some of his goons. We'll cover the guy in the back here in a second. But yeah, look at this overcoat, man. Wow. Just I love the style of this show. Yeah. Interesting brim adjustment. Yeah. Agreed. And then you can see here, they're not showing, right? We talked about that, right? When with Ian and with Paul, right? In terms of like the idea of not showing the lining of your hat, right? And it looks like they keep in, they keep in that gesture, right? In that tradition, at least in this scene, right? We don't see any of that lining, right? It's in their hand, right? But yeah, really cool outfits. And that actually looks like Jamie Kennedy in the back. I don't even know if that is Jamie Kennedy. Maybe it's not. Doesn't matter, but it looks like him. I saw him. I'm like, that looks like Jamie Kennedy. Yeah. So we'll keep moving. And that character that we saw in the background was Richard Harrow. And this is an interesting character, right? So Richard Harrow plays a World War I, right? So both James Darmody and Richard Harrow are World War I veterans, right? But Richard was a sniper. And actually suffered a horrific accident, right? And has to wear a facial prosthesis, right? And Richard usually is wearing a flat cap in the show, but what an interesting character, right? I mean, the idea of this facial prostheses, right? And how folks treat him, and he's kind of very self-aware. He's just a very, very complex character, right? For a character that's kind of not the star of the show. I think Richard Harrow is one of the most complex characters that you'll see on this show. And just very compelling, right? Every time he's on the screen, he kind of, you can't look away, because one, you feel sorry for him, but and in many ways, maybe he feels sorry for himself, but he carries himself so well. And like I said, he knows what everybody's thinking as soon as they see him. Just interesting character. So you can see there the flat cap is his hat of choice. You see it pretty much on him in most scenes, right? Just again, looks really sharp with the suits that he wears. Again, pretty capable man. right? And obviously these are guys that Nucky has around him. Um, and just I love the style of this show. We also get Stephen Graham here, right? Now, Stephen Graham plays a character that a lot of you guys already know. It's Al Capone, right? And we know Stephen Graham. He was in The Irishman and a bunch of other movies, right? He usually plays a tough guy, right? And he played Tony Pro in The Irishman. Just one of those guys that he's like, all right, even if you don't know his name, it's like, I know that guy, right? You've seen him play this kind of character. And he plays Al Capone. And, I thought he did a great job. Al Capone's character here is very, interesting, right? So like obviously here at this point, Al Capone's based in Chicago, right? So like, but we kind of know that Al Capone is a Brooklyn boy, right? He kind of escaped Brooklyn. I think he kind of got run out of Brooklyn and then went to Chicago and kind of took things over. And he's one of those characters that James kind of befriends early on. And he's an interesting character, right? You can see it kind of like duality. And I thought Stephen Graham did a great job with Al Capone, right? Like we always see Al Capone playing this ultra, yeah, Ian's correct. He is English. Yeah. And I don't know if I've seen him in a role where you see his English accent. He almost always plays some kind of mob guy. And but yeah, he's an impeccable, right? He's like another guy that you can't take your eyes off. He's like a magnet on that screen. And yeah, he plays Al Capone and he does a great job of showing some of like the insecurities, right, of Al Capone and obviously some of the ruthlessness that he's more famous for. But again, you got to love that when an actor comes in and takes a guy like Al Capone, somebody that's been played by Robert De Niro and so many other guys, and done well. But when they can kind of show another side of that character, and that speaks to the writing, right? To the writing on the show as well. So yeah, I thought Stephen Graham did a great job. Yeah. Ian says on TV here, he is from the North. Okay. Interesting. All right. Yeah, I Stephen Graham for me is like one of those really underrated actors. I feel like this show is like riddled with a lot of actors that you're like, none of them are really like stars of the show, maybe with a few exceptions, but just a stellar cast, man. You can see here, obviously, just like the real Al Capone, this Al Capone wears a mean hat, and he's always surrounded by goons that are also wearing some great hats. Man, look at this. Look at this gray. Oh my gosh. I love this hat, right? And you can see it. I ordinarily wouldn't think of a gray hat being paired with a brown overcoat, but it works, right? This is one of those things like if you're into this style, right? And I know a lot of folks are, it gives you great ideas for what can and can't work. Just when you think you're like, wow, I wouldn't think that this works, but when you see the still, and that's the key here, when you see it in a still, you're like, wow, that looks good. Just amazing. And the one thing here with Stephen Graham is the eyes, right? The work that he does with his eyes, right? We talked about that with Al Pacino. I think that's one of the things that a lot of these great actors, and Stephen Graham does it well here, is how he acts, right? How he communicates with just his eyes. His eyes coupled with his eyebrows, right? He's kind of like, like this look. I just thought it was fantastic. I love it. But yeah, just some great hats, and you can see all the goons behind wearing their flat caps, right? Kind of ready to throw down, and Al Capone right in front. So yeah, great job by Stephen Graham. And here you go, another high crown fedora for you high crown fedora lovers, right? That are kind of synonymous with this time, right? With Prohibition era. Yeah, they got that too. This one kind of looks like it has a little bit of matching brim trim on it. Man, it's a good looking hat. Another super wide ribbon. Just amazing. Again, paired with this suit, just sharp. These characters are just so sharply dressed. And again, I don't know. I know Al Capone was known for being sharply dressed, but I don't know about the rest of the folks in here. But it doesn't matter. I mean, again, if they're going to take liberties, I'm okay with them taking those liberties. Make everybody sharply dressed. I'm okay with that. Here's another shot. This one is Al Capone's hatless, but you can see some of the hats here on the other folks, right? Yeah, just amazing. Amazing swath here. Ian says, we can do an American accent, but Americans can really even ever do ours. Yeah, I find that true. And I'm sure there's some kind of like linguistic or, vocal reason for why that's the case. But yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like we can try doing it, but we rarely pass. It's very interesting. I'm trying to think of folks that maybe have done it well. I can't think of one. And that would be an uninformed opinion anyway, right? I'm no expert on the British accent, right? But yeah, interesting. Jedi says two cultures separated by a common language. Yeah, agreed, agreed. And then you see also with the Aussies, right? Like Russell Crowe, Mel Gibson, they can do an American accent, but I don't know how many folks could do it the other way. Yeah, so there's got to be something to that. There's got to be like a legit reason, like a more technical reason for why that's the case. But yeah, George Bernard Shaw. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, Ian, thank you very much for sharing. I love the fact that you do you share some of this stuff for our audience here. But yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, this show, like, there's not much more I can say, so I'll just keep going through some of the still shots here. That way, you guys get a flavor. But yeah, this particular scene, you can see the gentleman, the African American gentleman that they're confronting, and I'll get more into like his crew as well. But this is where James Darmody actually meets up with Al Capone, and you can see they're both wearing flat caps. At this point, Al Capone's not running things, right? He's working for a bigger boss, right? He's kind of more of an underling at this point, and you can see James, James and Al take a liking to each other, right? They take a shine together, and they become kind of more buddy buddy, So it's an interesting kind of development. You can see again how Stephen Graham adds more texture, right? To how is Al Capone with friends, right? With somebody that's his peer, right? Or considers his peer. That's something that you don't see tackled in many movies, right? You see Al Capone, the ruthless boss of Chicago, right? The De Niro cracking the guy over with the head of the baseball bat. Yeah, they have that here, but again, Al Capone having a normal shoot the breeze conversation, right? That's something that you get here. And again, regardless of whether it's actually true, right? Maybe Al Capone never really did stuff like that, right? Maybe he was always ruthless. I doubt that. I think there's a lot more nuance to Al Capone and to everybody, right? It's like not everybody can be hitting people with baseball bats every minute, right? Like how would Al Capone be like shooting the breeze? So I really love what they did with Al Capone here. This is another great shot, right? You can see here, it kind of looks like a Browning high power that he's got in his hand, but I don't know. This kind of almost like, I don't know if this would be a salmon color, whatever color this is, light brown, whatever this color is, it kind of almost looks salmon to me, but man, is it great. The matching suit with the matching fedora, man. Again, it's one of those things where if you didn't see the suit, you're like, yeah, that can't work, right? That wouldn't look good. But man, what a great style. I just love it. Love it. Let's see what else we got here. So here we talked about folks that were in other shows, right? The Wire, right? We have Michael Kenneth Williams, who also passed away a few years back. He plays a character called Chalky White. Again, Chalky White is an African American gangster. And he is one of those guys that tries to kind of, he's kind of defending, right? This is kind of all about turf, right? And trying to like defend his from all these characters, all these gangsters around him. He does it really well. So you can see some of the hats here. He has a glass of liquor, and he's got his hat right there on the table. He just does a great job of playing this character. Now, this is a more of a tough character. He always has that kind of like that, that mean mug, right? It's a constant mean mug for Chalky White. But you kind of understand why he has to be that way. Yeah, agreed. Great color combo. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is one of those things. Again, I don't know the name of the costumer, for the show, but man, impeccable. Like the style here is just, it just makes you feel like you're underdressed, right? He's like, man, I want to dress like this all the time, you know? And again, some folks do, you know, I've seen them. But yeah, shout out to James Bond, right? My buddy Jim, who comes on here. Jim, if you're watching, you're also one of those gentlemen that, you know, you would fit in right well in the show. You know, Mr. Bond, right? We all know James Bond now. You know, James is always impeccably dressed, man. Thanks for sending me some of those photos, James. You know, I hope you're doing well. One of my fellow Virginians. But yeah, Chalky, you know, this character, Michael Kenneth Williams, who, you know, again, very, very famous for his role in The Wire, but does a great job here as Chalky White. And we'll see some more shots of him, right? He's here surrounded by some of his goons, right? Look at this. Look at this. Now, again, this looks like a Hamburg here. He's got a kind of the Hamburg kind of done like Frank Sinatra style, right? The back of the head, right? Which is not something you see typically with the Hamburg, right? You almost always see the Hamburg pressed, appropriately placed on the head, but man, it looks great. He's got the bow tie, and look at the two goons right next to him, right? Just some really great high crown action. And man, again, more with the wide ribbon. I guess Gary White, again, either because this was period appropriate, or he just decided, hey, they're all going to have this wide ribbon. I like it a lot. I'm a big fan. So yeah. Another shot. I think this might be the same Hamburg, but it's a different suit. It looks like lighter colored suit. Oh man, just love it. It's got an orange bow tie, and then the fellow to his right got a green suit on with, it looks like a different shade of green hat. This one kind of looks like an Ian styled hat. Now I don't know what color that ribbon is. It kind of might be a different shade of olive, but yeah, really great. So definitely different color shade of green. A little bit more green blue on the suit, but works really, really well, man. I'm just geeking out about the style of the show. Besides the hats, right? The hats are definitely a big part of it, but the combination of the hats and the suits are just amazing. Really, really, really good stuff. Here is another character that they introduced, I believe, in season 3. Now, you guys probably know this actor also from The Irishman, right? This is Bobby Cannavale, who plays a gangster called Gyp Rossetti. And Bobby Cannavale is a very, very versatile actor, right? You might see him in a lot of like comedic roles, right? What was the one that? Oh man, I'm blanking here. It was with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. Daddy's Home. That's it. Daddy's Home. So he played a urologist in Daddy's Home. He was also in another Will Ferrell movie. Man, I keep blanking on him, but you guys know it was also with Mark Wahlberg. It wasn't Daddy's Home. Geez. Anyway, he played a cop. Either way, he does a lot of comedy as well, but he also does done a lot more gangsters, right? In The Irishman, he played the Razor, right? So he was the guy that kind of introduced Frank Sheeran, to kind of to the mob life, right? So he was kind of the guy that brought him in. So yeah, just interesting character, and just another guy that's impeccably dressed. But this is one of those loose cannon type characters, right? They bring him in there to kind of shake things up. But yeah, you can see some of the outfits, in here. Just another charismatic guy, right? Gyp Rossetti. Just the name right there. You're like, this guy's trouble. But besides being trouble, he's also impeccably dressed. I love it. There's a scene that I remember where he's being told by Nucky that he's no longer going to get supplied with rum. He kind of goes berserk on Nucky and kind of threatens him, and then realizes, because Nucky's kind of reminding him, is like, hey, you can't do anything about this. So he kind of does that thing. You can see the wheels turning, right? In the character, right there, where he's kind of like, all right, this is not the right time. I need to live to fight another day, right? Because he's got Lucky Luciano, and we'll get into that, and Meyer Lansky right there, as well as Arnold Rothstein. It's like, this is not a good time to make waves, so he bides his time, right? Love that. There's another shot here. He's got kind of another high crown style Hamburg here. And you can see that brim trim on one of his goons there to the left. Well, his right. But yeah, just I love the style, man. Jeez. Yeah, another great character introduced in the show. And again, I don't think he came in until season 3. Jedi says, interesting to me that so many folks pair a brown tone with the blue suit. Not a choice I'd make, I think. Funny that you mentioned that. That's actually one of the ones that I knew could work. Like for me, I have paired blue with brown, and I've always thought that actually worked, and as well as obviously brown and green. Right, you can tell right there with the jacket that we're seeing, right? Brown and green definitely go together, but as well as brown and blue. So I don't know, maybe that's just because I've experimented with before and I saw that it works. But yeah, blue it's a lot more versatile color than I think a lot of people, as well as green, that a lot of people give credit to. But yeah, just out of personal experience, I always thought brown, well, maybe not always, but since I've tried it out, I always saw that brown, if I wore a brown fedora with the blue, let's say blue jacket, I never looked like, it never looked bad. So yeah, so just FYI, so yeah, for all you guys that are wondering if that combination works, I think it works. We've seen here for that it could work. We've seen a lot of weird combinations, at least combinations that I thought were more weird in terms of colors in here that just happened to work, and I don't know. That's one of those things where that's why they hire costume people, right? People that have an eye for those kind of combinations to be able to come in here and just put things together. It's just amazing. It's basically magic to me. Let's see. We'll get into some more photos. Here is character Michael Stolberg, the actor who plays Arnold Rothstein. And you guys already heard about Arnold Rothstein when we've covered The Godfather, right? Right, we had a character in there that was also based loosely on Arnold Rothstein. And Arnold Rothstein, his claim to fame was, besides being like a Jewish financier, was fixing the 1919 World Series, right, with the Black Sox scandal, right? Shoeless Joe Jackson. So Arnold Rothstein is that character behind there, and he's one of a couple of Jewish gangsters, right, in this show, right? And you can see all the the mocking that they get, from the other gangsters, especially the Italian gangsters. And Arnold is a character that is also based on real life, and I think is played really well in this show, right? Kind of adds, like, he's kind of a mastermind type of guy. And I believe that's true to spec, right? Like Arnold Rothstein was kind of had that reputation of being that mastermind type character. So it's interesting to see them, and see the dynamic, because I do know that Arnold Rothstein and Lucky Luciano, as well as Meyer Lansky, did have a relationship. I think that's kind of like Arnold Rothstein brought them into the fold. And I believe that same group were the one that took out Arnold Rothstein, right? And we'll get to a little bit of that later. You can see here, Anatol Yusef, who plays Meyer Lansky. And what can you say about Meyer Lansky, man? There was a great movie starring, what's his name? Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel played Meyer Lansky in the movie called Lansky, and goes into some of the details of his life. And if you do a little bit of background research, Meyer Lansky he was considered the mob's accountant, right? He had a brilliant business mind, and he really partnered with Lucky Luciano, right? Despite their ethnic differences, the story goes is that Lucky Luciano actually tried to extort money from Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky, even though he was a small guy, wouldn't give up, right? He wouldn't give up the money. Like, he took a beating, and he still kept coming back. So at some point, essentially, they kind of cut a deal, right? They cut a business deal with Lucky Luciano would agree to protect Meyer for a fee, and they've been business partners ever since then. So interesting real relationship here, and I don't know how much they go into that in the show, but they're obviously connected here on the show, and I think it's also true to spec, right? I thought it's really, really good portrayal of Meyer Lansky here by Mr. Youssef. Again, we see a lot more. I don't think we see a whole lot of hats on Meyer, right? He's one of the characters very similar to James, where he's more hatless. But here you can see this Panama hat on Meyer. Man, just a great, I'm starting to really warm up to the Panama hats as well. This is another great one here on Meyer Lansky. Yeah, I don't know. I just can't get enough. Then we got Vincent Piazza, right? Also from Tulsa King, also from the Jersey Boys, right? Again, a guy you see in a lot of movies, and he plays Lucky Luciano. And you can see here, he also doesn't wear a lot of hats in the show, right? Vincent Piazza has a great kind of head of hair. But you can see this one scene here where he's wearing a fedora. Just a really great scene, and you can see the movie quote, "You got a fresh mouth for abroad." But yeah, Lucky Luciano is just his pairing with Meyer Lansky, right? That was epic, right? I mean, he's pretty much the guy, right? Like, he kind of changed the game. He went in and reorganized all of the Italian organized crime and chose to partner with the Jewish gangsters, right? Like, he had no problem with that. I think he had like a vision for how this could work or should work that was very different from a lot of the old heads at the time, in the Italian mob. And he really did. I think the Five Families in New York was his idea, right? Lucky Luciano paired with Meyer Lansky really kind of changed the crime game, and had a really big influence. So yeah. I don't know about this portrayal of Lucky Luciano. There's been a lot of good ones. Obviously we even had Christian Slater in the movie Mobsters play Lucky Luciano. But it wasn't a bad portrayal. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, for a guy like that, this is one of those things where, like, for me, it makes me think of, some of the Carlo Gambino, right? Another guy who was a pioneer and did things a lot different than a lot of his contemporaries. And you want somebody to come in and really do him justice, right? Like, we've seen it. We've seen the movie Gotti. We've seen some of the portrayals of Carlo Gambino, and great. But I feel like, somebody like Lucky Luciano, that's a big deal, right? It's very similar to Al Capone. In many ways could be even bigger than Al Capone. Maybe just doesn't have that same reputation. He was a little bit more diplomatic, but definitely, not a guy you messed with. So yeah, but this was a good portrayal as well. Again, for me, it seemed very accurate with some of the names that you hear, Mazzaria, some of the guys that that the real life Lucky Luciano got entangled with, right? They covered that in the movie Mobsters, where I believe Mazzaria, almost killed Lucky Luciano, but didn't kill him, and that's kind of how he got his name, Lucky, right? Everybody thought he would be dead, and he didn't die. Almost died, right? Took a severe beating, but never died, and it was actually, that's how he got his name, Lucky. So yeah, interesting story. So yeah, Lucky Luciano, Vincent Piazza. Not a whole lot of hats, but on both of these guys. But you can see here, this is the shot of all of them. Arnold Rothstein, you got Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky. Or Lansky, Luciano, and Rothstein from left to right. And you can see them wearing the hats, right? You got Piazza with the hat in the hand, Lucky Luciano, and the two other gentlemen are wearing their hats in their laps, right? None of them are showing the lining. So yeah, it could be a purposeful thing, right? Given what we've learned, that it's rude to show the lining of your hat. Maybe they respected that tradition here. But yeah, you can see the hats here paired with the suits. Just impeccable, man. And look at that pinstripe suit on Rothstein. Just love it. So yeah, just a treat for folks of the fans of the fashion of the 1920s. Another shot. This looks like one of those kind of promotional shots they set up to promote the show. But you got the same pairing here. You got Lucky Luciano, Arnold Rothstein, and Meyer Lansky. To the far right. So yeah, just an amazing shot, amazing wardrobe. And this is another character here. This is one of the feds. This is kind of like the equivalent of Elliot Ness, right? This is a federal agent played by Michael Shannon. The agent's called Nelson Van Alden. And I thought this was another, besides the fact that Michael Shannon is a very underrated actor, a guy who's like, he's got these like stone cold eyes, right? look at the eyes on Michael Shannon. It's got those, right? You see them in every movie, and it kind of like it draws you in. And you know, he's another one of these like morally ambiguous crime fighters, right? He does some weird stuff in the show, and you're like, is this a good guy or what? But he is trying to bust Nucky in the criminal, you know, the criminal element in Atlantic City, but also a guy that has demons and is a little weird. But yeah, I thought Michael Shannon did a great job, and obviously wore a great hat. So shout out to Michael Shannon, did a great job in this role. Jedi says, interesting brim shaping on Shannon. Yeah, it looks like a little bit of a thinner felt here on this hat. But yeah, wow, what a great hat still. This one kind of looks like a blue-gray, you know, type of color. And man, just I love the color combination. I'm trying to look at the suit. The blazer kind of looks more like a camel colored. But yeah, just amazing. Jedi says, I got to go to a meeting. Great show. See you later. See you, Jedi. Thanks for stopping by. No problem. Like I said, work comes first. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Let's see. So let's see what else we have. I think we might have another shot here. This is kind of Michael Shannon with some of his goons, right? His Fed goons, right? And we've always seen that in some of these movies where these agents, right, like in the Untouchables, right, they kind of have to go. They're almost like their own kind of gang, right? They kind of watch out for each other, and sometimes they do some morally questionable things in the name of justice. So it keeps in with that same tradition here. So you can see these guys, like if you didn't know better, you'd be like, this is another gang. You know, no, but these are a bunch of feds. So, but also great hats. What else? And I don't know this gentleman. I know that I vaguely remember, but I just wanted to point out some of these hats here because, well, they're great. But just to show you some of the other characters that appeared here and some of the combinations here, you got a more of a kind of a wine colored or burgundy colored suit here paired with a gray hat. Just love it. And then you got the brim trim, right? The matching gray brim trim on this hat. Love it. You know, like I said, Gary White did a great job on there. It's another, you know, another hat here. Look at this super wide ribbon. This is more of a green, you know, or maybe like a turquoise. No, not turquoise. Turquoise is probably not right. I'm just going to call it green, but you know, it's like a different shade of green. Man, just it looks almost like a brown ribbon here, but just great hat. And you can see it paired with this great blue jacket, right? So green and blue is paired here. And I don't know, it kind of works, right? It's like you wouldn't think it works, but it does kind of work. And you can see right there in the back, I believe that's Eli Nucky's brother with the derby again. You know, also pretty cool hat, you know. And then I mentioned we see some of the female characters in the show, and you can see some of their colorful hats. That way you guys know that, you know, it's not just all the guys, right? This true to form, you had the females wearing the hats here, and a lot of them are very decoratively adorned, right? This one kind of looks like a church, right? Like a productive thing you wear to church. And maybe that's what's happening here. Maybe they just came back from church. A girl kind of looks like she might be holding a Bible. But yeah, just some great hats all around. Another kind of more festive, more pink hat, right? Just really beautiful, right? Like I said, even if you know, even if it's not something that you would wear yourself, you're like, wow, that kind of looks really elegant, right? It really does enhance the character, right? Enhances the perception of class on the part of the character, right? When they're dressed up like this, at least in my mind. And here's a little bit more of a kind of a humble looking, you know, headwear here. And this is probably early on, right? When she was kind of like not doing so well financially. I think before she got with Nucky. If I'm getting the character, I think this is Margaret. So yeah, that's all I had for the slideshow. Oh, Paul, were you there the whole time?
Yeah, I was listening. I'm
so sorry. I had my slideshow up, you know, on my screen, so I couldn't see you were there. I'm sorry.
No problem. I was just appreciating. You must put in an awful lot of time to put these slideshows together, and they're really interesting. You know, you've got me convinced to have a look and see if I can find Boardwalk Empire now on
Yeah.
Netflix or whatever and have a look. But I mean, some of those hats were just gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm into Homburgs at the moment, and looking at some of those with the very high 50 mil plus
Yes.
cross grains. I mean, that's just
Isn't it
and
amazing?
you could do a session just talking about Homburgs. There's so many different executions, aren't there, of the Homburg shape that at least 3 or 4 anyway. But the higher ones, thinner ones with the dimples. I mean,
yes.
these are just great what they've done to them. And like you say, the costume people have excelled themselves in this program. It's just very nice, very good.
It's amazing, and it's one of those things where, like, you have, again, I think the only hat I think that I hadn't seen here was the pork pie, and it probably is one in there somewhere. But Gary White, we had Robert who shared that Gary White was in charge of making the hats for this production. Obviously, he had a great reputation of making hats for Hollywood. I'm trying to remember the other movies that we've covered, but we have covered movies that Gary White was involved. At least one, I remember talking about it. But they just went above and beyond in terms of the style here, because it's not just the hats, it's the hats paired with the outfit. And again, I don't think that was a Gary White thing. I think Gary White was in charge of the hats, but whoever did the costuming here, and they really hit a home run. And I think, like I said, I was mentioning it earlier on, Paul, that for hatters, sorry, Paul, I meant to take off the there we go. For hatters, it really does provide kind of a little bit of inspiration for what can be done, right? When somebody comes in, a customer maybe says, "Hey, I have this suit. What kind of thing? What would look well?" And it's nice to have some of these screenshots here from a show like this, because it feels like you almost have all the bases covered. And like Jedi mentioned, one of our viewers here, that there were some pairings here that you wouldn't even think would work, but when you see them on screen, you're like, "Wow, that looks really good."
Yeah, I think I'm all up for being adventurous with color combinations. I think that it takes a bit of a while for somebody when they first start wearing fedoras or trilbies to get used to the options, if you like. But I was with a gentleman today on Zoom, and he's gone for a stone-colored felt, but with a green, a peppermint green. Band around here and also around the brim. So that's going to look really quite something, quite different.
Yeah. And like I said, I mentioned here we had a couple great examples of the green fedora. And we've always had that conversation several times of the green as well as the wine colored being one of those, like, those in between colors, right? They're kind of like, they're right in the middle between conservative and more kind of those out there colors, where you can jazz up, let's say, a more conservative collection with a green or a wine colored fedora. And then obviously the one that you made for Ian, right? That combination of green and wine, I think that is like the apex, right? It's like that perfect.
Well, it's nice of you to say, but I'm a fan of green. I think that it's a very underrated color. And funny enough, excuse me, we did see, and I've certainly seen green on people like, what are they called? Thomas Farthing's range of hats, and some in Block and Co, and one or two others. I know that the people that do the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Herbert Johnson, they're using the green felts now. So I think there is a shift towards going to be a bit more adventurous. But I guess if you're only in a position to have 2 or 3 hats, then you tend to remain quite conservative here in the UK. But if you can let yourself go, then fantastic. I mean, just brilliant. I mean, some of the color. Well, look, we did black and orange for you. I know that was for your baseball team, but hey, that was cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things where, if again, it all depends on what your vision is for how your collection. If you want to have something for an occasion, right? I did that as more of my sports colored hat. But if there's an outfit that you really want to pair that hat with, whatever the reason is, those are the kind of those things that if you're thinking about where do I want to take my collection, they're really ones that if you don't, maybe you want that to be your only hat, or maybe you just want to add that as a compliment. I think those are great ideas for, you know, and to be honest, they're just a great excuse to just get another hat, you know, as if we needed one. But, well, you know, I got to wear this for my sports games, you know.
I've got my son's wedding coming up in the beginning of April. I think it's the 1st or 2nd of April, and I've got a blue with a check, sort of beige check in the blue, and I'm thinking I'm going to go for a dark blue hat with some of the beige check on the trim, but then under the brim here, I think I might put that checkered prism type material.
Oh, I love it.
I just think it would just bang, you know, it'd just be so outrageous, you know.
And that's perfect, because they know somebody's going to ask about it.
Yeah,
I mean, they can see that prism. They're going to ask you, "What is that?" and where do you get it? And you're like, "Well, I made it."
You know.
Let's see here. We got Nathan says, "You never know until you try the color combo." Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it might be a little bit more expensive, right? Maybe a little bit more reasonable thing. Let's say you get access to the show, a show like Boardwalk Empire. It's not the only show like that, but I feel like it's one of those quintessential shows where you're like, you know what? Let me go there just to kind of, even just for looking with an eye for fashion, and maybe take a few stills and say, oh, I'm saving that because that one has legs for the future, you know, for some kind of project. So I think that besides the fact that it's a really good story, you know, it's a really well produced show, just for the fashion in there, I think it's worth it. Nathan says black and red look good. Right, Paul? Wink, wink. All right, we got some insider info teasing us for something to come. I love it. You know,
I think Nathan was referring to his reveal later on in the month, or at the end of next month, rather, because of course we're not in March yet. But we'll see. I
love it. And I know, Nathan, you set up a new Instagram account. I believe it's called Tuck Hat. So follow Nathan's you know, his hat account. You get to see some of his great collection there, you know, which is still growing, you know, with the help of Paul and some of our other folks here. We'll get that Instagram channel full of some great hats. And so follow Nathan, you know, another one of our Good Looks network here. But this is just, again, I'm sure I didn't do near justice for what this show really is. I haven't completed the show yet. I think I'm kind of midway through the show, but I knew I was going to cover the show right from when I first saw it. And, you know, I'm like, you know what, today might as well be the day. So, you know, hopefully you guys all enjoyed that. Paul, you got anything else, you know, happening up the pike that you want to share?
This week, I finished the Homburger course, but then I've got, this one was a gentleman sent me a link to a hat that Thomas Farthing do. And he wanted, it's a wide brim Western, of course, and he wanted something in this color and look similar to that hat, but this is I think this is a 20x, so 20% beaver, 80% rabbit fur felt. So I've just sort of been finishing this one with a center crease in it. He wanted to be able to do whatever he wanted to the top, so he can it's left so he can bash it himself, and then of course the inside. So
I love that.
Hopefully he'll like this, but I'll just show you because it is my size actually. It's such a problem when you make such, you know, when I think of a great hats, you know, you sort of think, God, you know, there's another one I want, you know. It's like, because the 20% beaver, it doesn't sound a lot, but my goodness, it does make a difference. I think it's I think the color name is Camel. But
Camel, I love Camel.
See if I've got it. Canyon. They call it Canyon. Okay. I don't know. Look, it's FEPSA again, and they're of course they're Portuguese. So I don't know what it is, but it's and it's probably my lights in here, which are artificial, which doesn't do it very well. But it's a nice brown color, and it's an 8.5 centimeter brim, and so it's 9.5, and then pencil curled, 11 centimeter crown there, and it's about a 240 weight, so it is actually a Western weight. But
you can hear when you knock it.
You know, it's remarkably pliable. You know, if you put some steam on there, you could either make it a a teardrop or a center crease or whatever you wanted, or get rid of, take out the 2 dimples and just have it without the dimples. But so that's something I've been working on this week. And I've got another one here which I'm doing for the same gentleman, which is a grey. What he wants there is a very stiff brim, just like it's like a Stratoliner stroke open road. So so the proportions are a 5.5-inch crown, but open crown, so that then he can bash it however he wants to bash it. And I suspect he wants more of the Stratoliner look, if you like.
Yeah.
So that's very much this. Oh, the block won't come out. Oh, there we are. So it's quite a flat top, if you like, so that you can get quite a nice series of shapes. But I haven't yet sort of stiffened up the brim. I'm at very early stages with that one, but so that's been going down. And then I've been doing some repairs for somebody on a hat, and but orders are still coming in, and that's nice. I've had several meetings this week with people, and so yeah, I'm very content in the hat world. Let's put it that way.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I put down your information. Definitely take some of these hats away from Paul's inventory, if you can. That way he can keep making some more hats. Because Nathan can't buy them all. No, as much as he wants to.
It's funny. I was on a call this morning with somebody that he bought a hat from me last month, and he said, "Oh, I like that one you just showed me. I'll have that one." And then and then he come on a call today to discuss the handing over of that hat. And then he saw another one that I had, because I always put one behind, and Nathan knows that, and he's fallen in love with that. So now he wants that one. So if I could just keep, my wife keeps telling me, I think you're selling the hats to the same people, and they're just selling them between themselves or whatever, But who knows? But no.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And this is, like I said, this is one of those things where again, who knows what else, right? Like I said, we've already seen a little bit of Paul's evolution as a hatter just on the show here, in terms of the things that he's experimenting with, like that prism lining. That shows you again that Paul's not afraid to kind of take some chances out there with color, which I got to admire even more, because out in the UK it's not as you're not amenable. Right. But the nice thing is that Paul has customer bases, that are spread out. So he's got a good American customer base that are more amenable to some of those colors. So that gives Paul a lot more freedom to work with some of these more out there colors. And I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I've got their
That's right.
Yeah. I think I've got these plastic boxes. I've got 8 of them underneath our bed, and full up with hats. And I've got my dining room has been taken over, and my wife keeps saying, "Look, you've got to stop experimenting and making hats to show people." I said, "Look, I make these hats, I show people, and then they want it in their size. But I haven't made it in their size. I've made it in my size. So I've lost count now, but I've probably got 70 hats that are in my size. So But
Nathan, we got Nathan who shares your hat size. Hey, it's a gift and a curse, right?
Do you know what? If Nathan lived over in the UK, I'd work out a rental system with him. We'd have a rental system.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. See, I like that idea. See, that's the thing, right? I mentioned here my friend Jeff Garfinkel, the one that sells the hat cases. He's my size. When you find somebody else that has your size, that's somebody you got to make sure that you keep them not too far away, because hey, if they got to get rid of a hat or something like that, you never know. So it's kind of like, it's really great to meet somebody else that shares a similar hat size, because again, you never know how it is. It's like, what, this hat, it just doesn't do anything for me. You're interested? It's like, just make me an offer or whatnot, or take it and go, or we'll do a trade. I mean, whatever it is that you want to use, but it's always good to have somebody that, in your network that's the same hat size.
The other thing I wanted to mention today was that Ian and I are planning, and we've got to fix the date yet, in March, to have another trip to London.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that trip really is, we've gone into the main hatters that are significantly well known in the hat world.
Yeah.
What we thought we'd do is perhaps go into some of the big department stores like Harrods and Selfridges and maybe Harvey Nichols and things, and see what they do in the way of hats. But then also there are some there are some shops that sell vintage clothing, but I'm talking very sort of high quality vintage clothing, and of course hats is part of their setup. So there's 2 or 3 of those around sort of Knightsbridge, Kensington area. So we're sort of thinking about going there. So it might be another case of you get another call from maybe even Harrods tea shop or something.
I love it. I love it.
Another chat. But so Ian, if Ian's still on, I'll reach out perhaps next week and we'll fix a date. But I've got, I think, 2 other gentlemen who, if it falls in with their time scale, they will join us. They're customers of mine, and they fancy coming out and meeting Ian and having an afternoon with us. So it would be nice to think that over a period of time we might get as many as maybe half a dozen of us older gentlemen, let's say, pounding the streets of London looking for bargains in hats.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear that. Like I said, if you want to pop in, if I happen to be live, I love it. Especially if we can get Ian's face on there. Like I said, Ian's only made a couple appearances on there, but he lights up the screen. So I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Cool.
Yeah, man, good stuff. Well, guys, I mean, it's been almost it's a little over an hour and 20 minutes. I think this is a good time to cut it off. I want to thank Paul. Paul, I apologize again for if you were waiting too long there. I didn't see you. But thanks for joining us, on screen. And, and it's nice that we got, you had not seen the show. So this will be a good, nice gateway to the show. Cause I know there's a few folks, cause it's one of those shows that you don't hear that often about. I mean, you hear it, but then that a lot of folks had not seen the show. So hopefully if you guys are watching this and you hadn't seen the show, it'll give you another reason to tune in. Great show. And so Paul, thank you. Thank you to Nathan. Thank you to Jedi. Thank you to Ian for holding on the chat. And thanks to you guys for watching today. So this has been Fedora Friday number 24. You know how I'm going to leave you guys, right? Make sure you go and you support the channel. You support Paul's channel as well as his business, and support any of the fine folks here on the Good Lukes Network or outside of the Good Lukes Network, right? Support your hatter, regardless of where they're at. But even if you don't support, right? Even if you choose not to support your local hatter or his channel or any of the good folks here, the one thing you got to do, or else we'll get Nucky Thompson after you, right? The one thing you got to do is, no problem, that's non-negotiable. You got to stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody. Ciao.